Alright, so today we're going to do a simple tutorial just introducing people to the extrude command in Onshape. And I'm going to do this in the form that some of my freshmen are going to do for their first project here, learning how to do some 3D modeling. So once we have our Onshape set up, which is very easy to do, but once Onshape is set up, what we're going to do is start by going create and then document right up here. And when I click that, so for my students, what I've asked them to call this is, and this is part of their grade, MS0901, Intro to Maya. Okay, and then they're going to create this document and it's going to load up. Okay, now we're going to do two simple extrudes in this video. This will be the first of the of two in this playlist, and then we'll have a second video that's going to show some simple things like how to use the Revolve command, as well as change units and things like that. Okay, so once we're in our first part studio here, or we open our first document, by default it's usually going to create a part studio document and an assembly. We're not creating any assemblies here, so what we could do, and actually I'm going to do that, is we could click it and then right click and go ahead and delete that. We can always add it back later if we were to need it, but all four of the tabs that we create in this document are going to be based on part studio files. Okay, and these are all going to be very simple one feature projects. Okay, so first thing I told my students to do is rename their tabs. So the way we do that is we come down to this tab here, we right click, and then we hit rename, and we're going to rename it to Extrude 1 and hit enter. Now this tab is named Extrude 1. Okay, and the thing that we're going to create in this is going to be this simple part here I grabbed out of a drafting booklet I have. Ignore the 19, it was the 19th exercise of this one. But I like this one because it's not just a simple block and an extrude, but it's also has like a little feature here, a little cutout in the center. Okay, so I apologize if some of you already know this who are watching this video, but for my students, an extrude and a revolve are our two most common feature types that we're going to use in any type of 3D modeling program that we learn. So an extrude is going to be used for a piece like this. It's kind of square, all right, there's 3 dimensions to it, whereas a revolve would look something more like this, round piece, okay, that we revolve around. One of the mistakes a lot of people make on a revolve is they extrude it. This is not a part that should be extruded if you're planning on editing it down the road. An extrude should very clearly look very square. You know, it can certainly have rounded corners, but it shouldn't be something like a disc, okay, or like a shaft or something like that. So here's our simple part. We're going to identify some simple dimensions we're going to use. This thing is 4 inches wide, 2.5 inches tall. There's a cutout that's 1 by 1.5, it's 3/4 down, and the depth of this thing is 1.5. Okay, so in Onshape, whenever we start a part or a model, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a sketch. Now, how we go about this is a little different based on the program, so there will certainly be differences like when we use a program like Creo or SolidWorks or something like that. But in Onshape, the best way to do it is go up to Sketch here, okay, or if you hover over any of these icons, if there is a shortcut, so for example, Sketch is Shift S that you want to get used to, you can go ahead and, you know, hit Shift plus S. Sometimes you can also right click and get some shortcuts. We're just going to go up and click on Sketch to start off. And once we click on a sketch, we have to think about where in 3-dimensional space we want to create our sketch. Okay, so we have 3 basic planes here. We have a front plane, we have a right plane, and we have a top plane. Okay, now for this part, we're going to try and model it the same way that it was shown in that picture. So we're going to draw on the front plane. That's typically going to be the most common plane we pick first. So we're going to pick front. And then the next thing I like to do is go ahead and hold right click and go view normal to sketch plane. Okay, and what that's going to do is rotate so we're looking right at it. The other thing we could have done is, if we're in 3 dimensions, okay, I could have just clicked on the front view right here. Okay, now rotating around and moving and zooming and things like that in this program are pretty straightforward. The default is going to be right click to rotate. Okay, wheel up, wheel down to zoom in, zoom out. For me personally, and I'm going to show my students how to do this, for me personally, I've customized my settings to have the same settings as SolidWorks or Creo, because those are the other programs we use. Okay, but it's all personal preference. All right, so let's say I want to draw on the front plane. I can go to my little view cube here. I can click on the front plane. Now I'm on the front plane. Okay, now for this part, there's a couple ways I can approach it. All right, whenever I start to sketch something, okay, and the parts that we sketch first are going to be very simple. Okay, our next project, we're going to have multiple features, okay, and we'll go into more detail as we continue on. But to start off, we have one simple feature, okay, and the easiest way to do this, and the way to approach this, is when we're drawing in 2 dimensions in our sketch, we're going to imagine this thing isn't 3D. We're going to look at the surface that looks the most detailed. Now that surface would be this front surface here, because we can see it kind of makes like a C shape here. So I'm going to draw this shape, okay, on here by going up to line, or I could click L, okay, which would also do it. But I'm going to go up and click my line, and I'm going to kind of just make that general shape, okay? So I'm going to click here, I'm going to move up, I've let go of it, and don't worry about the number. We're just creating the shape, and we're going to put in dimensions that are going to change the size of the shape afterwards. Okay, the key is drawing the shape proportionately or pretty close to what it looks like, okay? So I don't need to go up to 2.5, okay? And I'll show you that. I'll kind of go to an extreme here. We're just going to go up to like 1, somewhere around there. Whatever you want, doesn't matter. You could go up to 20, and we can still make it work. So I'm just going to draw a line vertically up. And I know it's vertical because you can see that little black vertical line near where I'm drawing, okay? And that's important. It needs to be vertical. I don't want to draw it like this because then I have to fix it later. So I'm going to go straight up, click. Then I'm going to go over to the right. You see I have a nice horizontal line now. Going left to right, I'm going to click. I'm going to go down, click, over, click, down, click, over, and this time I'm going to make sure that I get that little imaginary dotted yellow line to tell me that I am aligned with the top line there. Okay, that's important. If I drew it way out here, could I fix it after? Absolutely. Okay, but save yourself some time. Go like this. Okay, but just to teach you something else, I'm going to go way out here. Okay, just to show how we would fix it if accidentally we didn't have that dotted line showing up when we clicked again. Okay, so I'm going to come out here, click, down, click, back over, click. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and hit escape on my keyboard to get out of that line command. Okay, and you can see I have several lines here. One of them's black right here, and one of them's black right here, but the rest of them are blue. Okay, now general rule anytime we're modeling in Onshape, when you create a sketch, if that sketch is not entirely black by the time you are about to finish and move on to making your 3-dimensional objects, you do not exit that sketch. You are not, the program will allow you to, okay? But a very quick way to lose points on your project is if I go into your project and see blue lines, because that means you didn't go through and fully define the object, okay? So there's a couple different ways that we're going to fully define an object. All right, so first, one thing we can do, remember how I said that you should try and make that dotted line to line up these 2 lines? I can fix that now. What that dotted line did was it was putting in a vertical constraint between 2 points. Okay, I can do that now. All right, so this section right here, where we have coincident, concentric, parallel, tangent, horizontal, vertical, perpendicular, equal, and midpoint. These are called constraints. Constraints are the first place you should go when you're modeling, okay? So I'm gonna click on this vertical constraint, and I'm gonna pick this point, and I'm gonna pick this point. And now it's gonna move those over to say, these are vertically in line with each other, okay? Which means if this line moves, okay, this one up here, then this line's gonna move as well. Now there's other ways I could have done that, okay? So let me just undo that. There's not only one constraint in all cases. The other thing that this making these both vertical means is that this line and this line are now equal, okay? I can do that too. So I could go equal, I could say this line and this line are equal. Now look at that, it lines up again. I could go a third way, okay? So I could go up, hit equal again. I could say my top line and my bottom line are equal. And now it does the same thing, okay? What this is called is parametric modeling, all right? What we're doing right now, what we're learning is how to model with parameters, okay? The parameters that I just put in were that this line and this line are equal, okay? This line, this line, this line, and this line are horizontal. This line, this line, this line, and this one are vertical, okay? So those are the parameters I have so far. Now I'm gonna look at it and I'm gonna say, okay, is there anything else, okay, that I need to add as a constraint? Well, let's look at the part, okay? Is there anything else that the part or the sketch is telling me needs a constraint? Well, the only other thing I can think of is that possibly this top and bottom end could be equal. In fact, I believe they are. However, if I'm going to model this properly and model it the way that it's made, okay, I have a dimension here that tells me how tall that is. So I don't need to say these are equal. We're gonna put in dimensions, and if we miss a constraint at the end, we can always go back and put them in at the end, okay? So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna put in dimensions, which is this little tool right here, okay? I could also hit D, and you can see it jumps right over there, all right? Now let's put in the dimensions we have, all right? And notice, by the way, as I add these dimensions in, notice how the part is going to change, okay? It's gonna start moving because I'm adding parameters. Remember how I said at the beginning, you don't have to draw this line the exact length. You're not gonna be able to, okay? You can get close, but it's not gonna be exact until you put a dimension in. So let's put a dimension in for that 2.5 dimension. So I have two ways I can do it. I can either pick an entity, meaning like this line, click, and then I move out and click, and now I have a dimension here, 2.5. Now my part grows, okay? Or the other way I could have done it is I could have again gone in the dimension command and I can measure between two parts, okay? So I could go from this line to this line and then click over here. 2.5, same exact result, okay? Now it's important to understand that both of these scenarios work the exact same way, okay? As long as your geometry dictates that that's the case. If one of these lines were at an angle, well, I wouldn't be able to measure from that to that. I'd have to measure from the point to one of these here, okay? So you have several tools in the toolbox here. I can measure one thing. I can measure the distance between two things, okay? Whether they're a line, a point, or whatever else, okay? So now let's put the rest of our dimensions in. I'm gonna click this one, I'm gonna move up. I'm gonna click, I was pretty close on that one. I'll go 4, look at that. Now it's exactly 4, all right? We're gonna pull out this dimension, so I'm gonna click this line, move over, 0.75, click. Okay, now we have that. Notice there's only 2 blue lines left. I'm defining this properly, okay? And it's gonna tell me what isn't defined as I'm going, okay? So right now, the 4 defines this line to this line, so that's why that's black. This line, okay, has a constraint controlling where it is, all right? So that 4 also defined this line. The 2.5 defines the bottom line to the top line, that's why the top line's black, okay? And this 0.75 just defined where this one was, and that's why that's black now. Now let's add another one in. From here down to here, come out here, click, 1, enter. Now this one's black. The only one I have left that's blue is this one here. And if I look back at my part, Well, I have a dimension right here that says that the distance to that line is 1.5. Okay, so I'm going to move that back out of the way. I'm going to come back over here. And this time, I'm going to measure from this line, and I can either pick the line, or this time I'll pick a point just to prove a point here. No pun intended. And I'm going to go ahead and click this point, come down here, click, and now put in 1.5, which was the dimension. Now notice the entire sketch is black. Okay? That means that I have fully defined my sketch. I'm ready to add the third dimension to it. Okay? We've made a 2D sketch. In order to make the part 3D, 3 dimensions, we need to add depth. Okay? So we're going to hit OK, hit the checkbox. And then however you chose to set it up, please rotate your screen either with your middle mouse button or right mouse button if that's what you have it set up to. You can also drag the cube around, I believe. Well, maybe not. Used to be able to. Okay, now there's 2 ways we can add depth to this. Okay, now Onshape set up a little bit differently. Sometimes you're going to put a lot of detail in your sketches that doesn't need to be there. Okay, but in this case, our sketch is simply the outside of the object, so I can go one of 2 ways. We can go up to Extrude. I could hit Shift-E as well, or I can pick my sketch and hit Extrude. So let me show you what the 2 options do. If I hit Extrude, okay, it's going to say, first off, what is the faces or regions you want to extrude? Well, I want to extrude this sketch over here. Well, when I pick the sketch, it says faces of sketch 1. Notice how now it's taking my sketch and extruding it in a direction, an extrusion, okay? This is similar to how a lot of materials are made. If you look at like angle iron or I-beams or things like that, they're made with a method of extrusion. We melt down metal, we push them through shapes, whether they're molds or whatever else, and it extrudes out to be that shape, okay, to keep them uniform. That's kind of the same idea. All right, now, there's a couple things I could do here, all right? This is a new thing. I don't have any new 3D models, or I don't have any other 3D modeled surfaces right now. So I'm going to leave it on new. That's good. If I was adding material, I would pick add. If I was removing material, I'd pick remove. Okay. Now, right now, we have a blind extrusion, which just means that I'm moving in one direction a certain amount. Okay. I could also go to a symmetric extrusion, which is going to go half and half each way. And then the other ones aren't things that I'm going to use right now. These would be for removing things up to something, through all, etc. We won't worry about those. We'll learn them in a later lesson. Okay, so we're going to go with blind for no other reason than, you know, we don't really have a whole lot of information as to how we're going to use this part right now. Okay, so I'm going to stick with blind. I can also hit this arrow here and flip what direction it's extruding in. Okay, for this project, that doesn't matter. Okay, pick whatever you like. For the depth, I'm going to put in 1.5 because that's what it said on the sketch, 1.5. I'm going to hit enter. There's my extrusion. Okay, now all I have to do is just hit check. And my part is done. Extrude number 1 of the exercise is done. Okay, now for part number 2, we have a slightly different extrude. Okay, it looks like this. All right, so I'm going to teach you a little bit different technique for this one. All right, now we can come down here, okay, where our extrude 1 is, and there should be a little plus sign that says insert new element. Okay, we're going to hit that, and we're going to say that we want to create a new part studio. That's going to add another tab here. This is different than some other 3D modeling programs where we're creating files, but because this is a browser-based program, if you have an assembly with 100 pieces, you can put all 100 pieces in the same document, okay, which is kind of neat. Now, we have a new part studio here. We're going to right-click, okay, rename it, and for this one, I asked the students to rename it to Extrude 2. And hit enter. Okay. Now, one thing I do want to mention real quick, if we go back, we can click on Extrude 1, it'll bring us right back to that tab. Extrude 2 will bring us to the other one. So if I go to Extrude 1, one thing I'd like you to do is get used to, when you're done, hitting this little down arrow and going to isometric. Okay, that's going to give you a nice isometric view. Now for extrude number 2, we have some other considerations to make. Okay, we're going to start the same way. We're going to go up to sketch, we're going to click on sketch, we're going to pick the front plane, and then we're going to hold right click on it, click right click, and then go to view normal to sketch plane again. Okay, again, you could have clicked front, you would have done the same thing. No, but there's multiple ways to do things. Okay, so here's what we're going to do this time. This is what we call a symmetric part. Okay, meaning if I cut this thing right down the middle and put a mirror there, it's like a reflection on either side. If I put a line down the middle of this point to the bottom, that's called symmetric or symmetry. When you have a symmetric part, unless there's a real reason not to, you should model it symmetrically. Okay, main reason is down the road when we assemble this stuff together. In any parametric modeling program, you may be using these datum planes that we've been looking at to assemble them to other pieces. Okay, so if my part's symmetric and I keep my datum planes in the middle, it's easy to assemble the middle to other parts. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my front view here, and we're going to draw the sketch. Okay, we're going to start up here this time. We're going to go click, come down, make sure it's vertical like that, click. Now I'm going to go all the way over, click, up. I'm going to try and align those. If it doesn't let me, no big deal. We're going to set up some constraints anyways. Click, and then we're going to go over, click, down to an angle to where the datum plane is, click, and we're going to go up. And you notice if it doesn't make the connection automatically, you can go and hover over the point for a second, and then move over, and it'll lock in with that point. So then click, and then move over, click again. All right, now we have one last thing I'd like you to do. Okay, in order to make this thing symmetric, okay, to make this thing so that it's like a nice sort of mirror image, so to speak. All right, we may need to put in something like a center line or something like that. But for now, what we're going to do is just make things based on some simple constraints. Okay, so if this thing's symmetric, meaning these things are reflections of each other, we have a whole bunch of stuff that we can say is equal. Okay, so we're going to pick equal for our constraint first. We're going to say this side and this side, by clicking each side, are equal. We're then going to click equal again, and we're going to say this and this are equal. We're going to say this and this are equal. Okay, and notice how this whole thing has come in. Now it's nice and symmetric. However, we don't have any dimensions to say how big it is. Okay, so let's fix that. So we're going to go dimension, and we're going to first start by going from one side to the other side, and we're going to say this overall thing is 4 inches. Now, we also need to say how tall it is. So I'm going to pick this side, come out, click, 2.5. Okay. Now it also says that these sides are both 0.75. Okay, 3/4. So I'm going to make this one 0.75. You'll notice though, if I go to put one in here, okay, it goes gray because I already have a constraint there telling me that those are equal. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of it. All right, and actually, just because I like to do things more like a book from left to right, I'm going to move my dimension. You certainly don't have to. Okay, 0.75. Now I have some interesting angles here. Okay, I've got some 45-degree angles saying from here to here, and I don't have anything I can measure off of there. Now I have a couple ways I could do it. Okay, if we use some geometry understanding and like complementary and supplementary angles, things like that. Okay, I could first off go from here down to here, and that would give me an angle to put in. I don't like that though. Okay, I'll be honest with you. I don't like that big gap all the way down there. A more logical way would be pick this line, pick this line. Now notice if I'm out here or down here, I'm getting a big angle, right? But if I follow that line up and I make sure I'm inside of where that line would project to, look at that, I get an angle right here. That's pretty useful. Or, and honestly, if I was going to dimension it, I would do it this way. Okay, so I'm going to ask that all of you do it. Just go ahead and click 45, enter. Now we're at a nice angle. But I'm going to show you one alternative. Okay, I also could create a line using the construction method and create a construction line that goes over like this and hit escape, and then put a dimension in from here to here of 45 degrees, and now everything's happy. Personally, I like this way. Okay, put that right there, nice and easy to read. Okay, and we're already done with this whole sketch. Okay, now all I have to do is extrude it. So I'm going to hit the checkbox. I'm going to rotate my screen. This time we're going to do it a different way. I'm going to pick the sketch first, then go to extrude. And it's going to automatically see that I'm extruding this thing. Okay? Now, just for the heck of it, because we made the rest of it symmetric, let's keep all the datum planes right in the middle. So let's go to symmetric, and then let's put in our depth, 1.5, and hit the checkbox. And now this part's done. And we're going to hit this down arrow, go to isometric, and we're done with the first half of the exercise.